Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next edition of the SCHOTT Pharmaversity podcast. The topic of today is all about making syringes smart. And we will actually be talking about how to equip a PFS with RFID, why you might want to do this, and what it means for the pharma filling processes. And for sure, I'm not alone here today, so I have actually two guest speakers with me. One is Mr. Arne Rehm. He is actually Senior Product Manager, RFID and NFC Solutions at Schreiner Medipharm. And Tom van Ginneken. He's Product Manager for SCHOTT Topax syringes at SCHOTT Pharma. And these two experts have been working on bringing smart syringes to the market for a while now. So before I talk much more, I would say we jump directly into the topic and let's talk about why making syringes smart and also about why this is actually quite relevant today. And here I would like to address my first question, Tom, to you, and this is exactly this. Why would you say is this topic of relevance?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Yeah, a smart syringe is actually your already existing high-quality prefillable syringe, but with an RFID tag. Now, this RFID tag provides the syringe with unique identifier, which allows for connectivity and communication with other devices. And this ultimately is enabling a more efficient process in hospitals. Now, we are all aware of a hospital setting and its notorious hectic place for drug shortages and even inefficiencies and labor-intensive manual steps, which actually means that the healthcare workers cannot focus on their primary goal, which is actually taking care of patients. Now, with this smart syringe, a lot of those manual steps can be automized, and it frees up a lot of time for the healthcare workers, as well as it reduces the risk for those errors which are induced by those manual processes. So just overall, a much more safe or much safer environment for the patient.
Okay, Tom, well, you mentioned efficiencies and processes here. Could you give us some examples of these more efficient processes with a smart syringe?
Yeah, of course. First example is inventory management. A smart syringe can be monitored during the storage and transport steps in a hospital. So there's a perfect transparency of what kind of drugs, in which kind of amount, where are they available. So this makes, first of all, the automatic replenishing much easier without having to make up inventories. But also, for instance, drug diversion can be combated. So it's much more difficult to steal controlled substances because every syringe movement can be logged by time, place, and also who took it. So also another example is potential drug recalls, which are much easier to handle. Where in the past, every drug storage needed to be screened to look for the affected drug and the batch. Now with the complete transparency that it's available, everything can be looked in one overview. Another example is this smart syringe can also be upgraded with other features too. Just as an example, digital first opening indication. So this makes it much easier to identify syringes which are prepared for operating room, but a lot of those syringes which are being prepared are not all being used. So instead of throwing them all away, with the batch readout that we can do with the RFID syringes, you can now see which one have been opened and which one have not been opened and have been used before. Another example is also the smart syringe as a great help in digitalizing patient records. The current practice here is that healthcare workers need to manually log which drug they have given to which patient. This process can all be automized with scanning the syringes and the patient file. So no manual writing means saving time and reducing mistakes.
Okay,
And
wow.
maybe I didn't
want to interrupt.
Well, I have so many advantages, maybe one more. So the last one that comes to my mind is also the possibility of this smart syringe to communicate with other medical devices, such as infusion pumps. So where the healthcare worker now has to select the right program on the pump, the right syringe type, the drug, the injection speed, and so on. This smart syringe could automatically communicate with the infusion pump, letting it know what kind of concentration, what kind of drug, what kind of syringe it is, so that everything again, less manual steps needed to set up the infusion pump, and means less mistakes.
Okay, well, I do see there is really a lot of examples that you can bring up here. So thanks for giving us this various aspects, and also seeing that various processes can be positively influenced here. Maybe to just go back one step, and maybe Arne, this is one more question into your direction. In the introduction, we mentioned that the smart syringes are equipped with RFID. Maybe you can explain us a bit more on this RFID. I mean, what kind of technology is it, and why is it so interesting for the smart syringe?
Yes, sure. So first of all, RFID stands for radio frequency identification. So meaning it's a wireless technology that uses radio waves to transmit data between a device and a tag. So there's a lot of technology behind it, but I think that's the basic thing to know. And when a tag then comes within a range of an RFID reader, it just sends a signal containing a unique identifier and often also additional data to the reader. And yeah, this data then can be used to identify and track the tagged object. And yeah, it has been used for many, many years, and for so many different applications besides the mentioned ones from Tom. So in various applications, for example, inventory management for all kinds of goods. So for clothing, for example, so managing the restocking and maybe even the checkout in a shop. Identification of animals, are very often seen these yellow tags in an ear, very often equipped with an RFID tag. Access control is everything we have to cope when we go to work and just stamp into our work, but we also use it at the gym or parking lots, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things we interact with RFID in our daily life. And if you're traveling, also your passport is equipped with RFID. Yeah, and there's several real benefits of using RFID compared to some other identification or unique identification technologies. There's no direct line of sight needed. So this allows a very simple and especially fast reading process. And compared, for example, to visual identification technologies, this allows an identification also in bulk, meaning that a user doesn't need to scan something piece by piece, but just being close enough to the tag, he can read up hundreds of pieces at once. So in a fraction of a second, you have the identities of hundreds of products in front of you. And because it is being used in so many industries and products for a long time now, the technology is really mature, and also the cost structure is pretty economical.
Okay. Well, very interesting to see that this, older technology, so to say, or well-known technology is now applied here in this context. To maybe better imagine it all a bit, and let's talk about the how. And maybe Tom, this is again another question to you. Well, how can the hospitals implement such a technology or this, and what does this smart syringe really look like? How do we have to imagine that?
Yeah, good question. So actually, the prefilled syringe is, let's say, the already standard high-quality prefilled syringe that everybody's familiar with. Now, pharmaceutical companies that bring the drugs to the market, they will fill those drugs, and one of the last steps that they will do is they will label the syringe. Now, this label typically contains information on drug, shelf life, safety information. Now, what we did here, so Schreiner, Medipharm, and SCHOTT Pharma have developed a label that does more than just provide that information. So the RFID chip is integrated in this label, and it's adapted to the SCHOTT Topax syringes. So during the fill finishing of the syringe, the pharmaceutical company can write all the relevant, let's say, drug, batch, concentration, production information onto the chip. And because every syringe needs to be labeled, there is no additional effort needed at the pharma company. So there's no additional process step needed. The only thing that is going to be added as an extra, let's say, effort is that inexpensive RFID reading equipment would need to be installed both at the pharma production process as well as in the hospital. So the prefilled syringe is actually just the existing syringe with modification of changes, which can readily be supplied by SCHOTT Pharma. And the label comes from Schreiner Medipharm. And we have already tested the combination of those two systems on the most important RFID functionalities. So that's ready for implementation for the hospital, and they can benefit from a pre-tested, a pre-filled, and a pre-tagged drug delivery system.
Okay, thanks. I think that helps to imagine it a bit better. Maybe your last comment brings me to another question here. And Arne, maybe into your direction again. You mentioned the topic of pre-tested. And maybe Arne, can you explain us a bit what does this exactly mean? So what has been tested and why does it benefit the pharmaceutical company and or the hospital in this case?
So yeah, it really is important to understand that the use of RFID for pharmaceutical products is anything but simple. Although the technology itself is quite mature and robust and old, as already mentioned, many attempts of using RFID in the past on a large scale for pharmaceutical products really failed due to the technical feasibility. And also not to mention the cost aspects in the past as well. But in particular, liquids have a very large impact on the functionality of RFID, meaning the reading range is quite limited, which then prevents really taking or making use of the benefits of reading in bulk. If you cannot read them because you are too far away, then it really does not work as expected. So in reality, it's even more complex as we have to deal with a large number of different liquids, fill levels, container sizes. So you have a topic line from 1 ml to 50 ml syringes, so which is quite a big difference in volume of liquids. So this makes it really, really complex. And therefore, we spend quite a lot of time optimizing and tuning the RFID inlay, not only for the syringes, as the syringes themselves, but also for the potential contents and all the other variables that might have an influence. And however, these scenarios were not only tested in the lab, but also in the cooperation with equipment manufacturers. So the RFID equipment that could be used in the hospital to read out these syringes, and also along the line when processing the syringes. And yeah, last but not least, also the testing procedures of leading institutions were also taken into account to really get a good understanding of how this kind of pre-testing of a product should be to make it work in the end. And this pursues one or a few clear goals. For the pharmaceutical company, the implementation must be as simple as possible. In particular, an effect on the existing processing procedures, including the labeling, line speed, for example, this definitely must be excluded. And in the final application at the hospital, the syringes should read flawlessly. That's a goal for sure. So independent of the equipment and all the relevant scenarios I just mentioned, it just needs to work. And in this way, the actual added value, the patient safety, the security of supply, etc., all what Tom just mentioned can be ensured. So for now, there's one additional aspect. There's different systems available on the market using different data structures and approaches. So for example, some rely on all data being encoded into the tag itself. So not only the product identifier, but also expiration date and lot information is stored directly into the tag, which is possible with RFID. Other concepts work with an online approach. So you just have an identifier and all the relevant data to the product is stored in a cloud base. And that's also one part of the pre-testing and also beneficial in the end for our pharmaceutical customers. Our concept has been tested with both kind of approaches, and so we are agnostic and compatible to both worlds. And hopefully in the future, I'm quite optimistic that both worlds will collide in the future.
Wow, very interesting to hear what you have considered, and also to hear a bit more about the challenges that are coming with it. So it's great to hear that there is a lot ongoing, and it sounds like really exciting times are coming up in this field of using the long-use technology now in the pharmaceutical field of syringes. So this actually brings me to the end of today's podcast, and I would like to really say thank you to you, Tom and Arne, for giving us this insight into this very interesting topic, which will definitely be becoming more important in the future. So first of all, thank you very much for taking the time today to be here with us.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
And I would also like to thank our audience for being with us today, for listening to the podcast. And I would be very happy if you join in for another session of the next podcast or a next Pharmaversity session. So thank you very much and goodbye.